Hi there, Amy here from Click Roll Boom, and today I'll be talking to Chris Tapp, frontman of Indiana-based heavy rock trio The Cold Stairs, who've just put out their latest album, Voices, in March this year.
Hi. So assume that no one has ever heard of the Cold Stairs. Can you tell me a bit about who you are, what your history is?
Yeah, we're a couple Midwestern guys starting out. So we were a two-piece band for about 8 years. We both, Brian and I, the drummer, grew up in Kentucky. We now live in Indiana, which is just about 30 minutes north where we grew up. And after about 8 years of being a duo, we became a trio, and we've been that for about a year now. And we play blues rock and kind of rootsy type rock, singer-songwriter meets kind of classic rock stuff. And we've had songs on commercials and TVs and movies and
Wow.
just out hustling.
So where did the band's name come from?
The first show that we played together, Brian and I were opening up for a friend of ours, and we were kind of overcompensating for not having a bass player. So I had like 6, 7 amps maybe with me on stage, and we were brutally loud that night. And I just remember after the concert, Brian and I having a discussion, and he said, "What do you think they thought?" And I said, "Well, I think we got the cold stares just from the volume." And I don't know, it just kind of stuck. It just kind of came back from that.
So you didn't get a very good reception that night?
No, we did. The thing is that we had been a four-piece band prior to that was quite a bit softer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that people knew what to expect whenever they heard us.
Yeah.
So a lot of jaws kind of dropped. And the other thing is I kind of figured out a rig that even as a two-piece, we kind of sounded more like four. It was pretty bombastic and big. And so, yeah, and we got a better response with that than the band we had been in prior couple of years. So it was good.
So when you were a two-piece, did you ever have sort of session musicians or touring musicians, or was it only ever just you two?
Always just us. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you describe your sound?
I would say we are a take or a version on the classic 70s kind of blues rock type stuff, with the exception of we're kids of the 90s. So there's a little bit of some Soundgarden and grunge in there, maybe. And then I'm a lover of singer-songwriter stuff. So Bob Dylan and classic kind of folky type stuff, and also really early blues. So there's a little emphasis on the lyrics and kind of telling the story in there as well.
Because you have like a lot of heavy stuff, and then you'll throw in a much more soft, slow, unexpected sound in there.
Yeah, I was a big fan of like Led Zeppelin 3 and a lot of the kind of 70s records where you'd have some heavy stuff mixed with some kind of folk type stuff.
Keeps it interesting.
It's more of a journey. It's tougher now these days because there's less records and it's more emphasis on singles. So sometimes somebody will hear a single of ours and go, "Oh, I thought you were kind of an acoustic gothic type thing, and now you sound like Sabbath, and then the next time you sound like Cream." So I like it in an album format for that reason. But
yeah, do your albums tell a story? Do they all piece together to kind of make a full like journey?
I think if nothing else, they tell a story of kind of where I was at the time of writing them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Try to have them.
And we've touched on this. Which bands have influenced your style mainly?
So early blues stuff, lyrically early blues, Delta blues, Southern music, folk music, lyrically, with the stories and stuff. And then on the electric side of things, Free, Zeppelin, Cream, Sabbath, all the kind of 70s British great stuff.
Yeah. You've been going for over a decade now. How would you say your sound has evolved in that time?
I think that we are a little bit, I just think it's just kind of got honed in. I think the lyrics and the songwriting process has probably gotten a little bit more, refined. The last record, Voices, and then the record that we're working on now is quite a bit of an expansion just because we have a bass player now. But as a songwriter, I've tried to send forth messages and stuff in the songs, and I don't think as a songwriter I've changed an incredible lot since we started, you know. But I think maybe just more refined, and just I think it's easier to say probably what I'm wanting to say through the songs now.
Have the themes of what you're writing about changed, would you say?
Yeah, a little bit, because the first up until the Voices record, I'd never really had a love song on a record, so we kind of allowed myself to kind of go there, and this last record touch on some things that I kind of hadn't touched on earlier records. But I always joke around that either somebody dies. My wife always says somebody dies in one of our songs, but um, I was a lover of old movies, Western movies, and kind of Southern Gothic novels, and a lot of that had either somebody, it's just kind of the darker side of humanity sometimes. So that creeps into the songs. But those old records I loved also had some gospel songs on them every now and then, or they had story songs on it. So that stuff creeps in as well.
You mentioned that you added Bryce to your lineup in 2022. Would you say that's changed the dynamic of the band?
Yeah, very much so. I'm able to kind of stretch out on guitar, playing live now, and actually play the solos from the records. So that's helped. And then a lot of times we can kind of pick a song and explore live and kind of take it to some different spaces. I think that's maybe for me as a fan of other bands, I love to see other bands kind of do that. So that's helped a lot.
When you're writing a song, where would you say your main inspirations come from?
Oh, it could be anything. It could be a movie that I watched the night before. It could be a book I was reading. It could be something else that a friend or family's going through, or I'm as a songwriter, I'm always looking for something to grab. So yeah, I'll take it where
anything.
Yeah, the antenna's always up. I'll take it where I can get it.
When you're writing a song, what comes first, the music or the words?
90% of the time, the music. There are some examples. In the Nighttime, Jesus Brother James, there's a few songs that where the melody and the lyrics kind of came first. But in general, it's more me writing to the music that we've kind of created.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've spoken to a lot of bands, and I would have always thought the words came first and then you make the music around them. But I'm not musically minded. So it's been quite surprising that a lot of bands have said that the music comes first. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think sometimes the lyrics are generated by the way that the music sounds. And to me, the way that I visualize the music, because a lot of times I'm always seeing music in my mind of a guitar part or a part in a song draws kind of a visual of a story or something to me. So
yeah. You put out your 6th album, Voices, in March. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, it was our first record with a bass player. We had written the songs, and we kind of had them pretty tight before we went in the studio. So we were in the studio about a day and a half recording, and 2 days maybe total recording.
That was quick.
Yeah. So it's fun to do it that way, because you kind of capture that moment without getting too caught up in it. But we did, I can't say that we did work pretty hard before going in the studio to make sure everything was down, so we're not wasting time. But I think as a record, it's probably the most mature thing we've done. We've kind of gone out in some different areas on the record, instead of the record prior to that, Heavy Shoes, kind of had a dark theme from beginning to end, and it was more of our COVID lockdown record. This record kind of showed a little bit of the morning sun on the next day.
Of the 6 albums you've put out, do you have a particular favorite or one that holds a special memory or story?
No, they're all my favorite when they come out for a while. I have songs that maybe I go back to that mean more than others, but they kind of vary across the records. I'm proud of all the work we've done, so I hate to pick one. There's a few records that I can remember the recording of that was a really fun time. So that maybe leans that.
When you play live shows, do you tend to play stuff off all the back catalogue?
Yes, we play everything. Yeah, if we don't, we get yelled at by the fans, and even now we've got as much material as we have. Even when we play an hour and a half or 2 hours, I still have somebody that comes up after the show and is like, why didn't you play this song? You know?
It's hard to put everyone's favorites in a set, isn't it?
It is, and a lot of times now, if we do an encore, I'll just say, "Hey, what do you want to hear?" You know, first couple things that I hear yelled, then we'll try to roll into that.
You don't ever get put on the spot and they want you to play something you've not played in years and you can't remember how it goes.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially the acoustic stuff, and you know, in a small room or smaller environment, the acoustic stuff goes well. But if everybody's drinking and loud and whatever else, it's very tough to play those songs live.
What's been your biggest show to date?
Probably the Ride Festival. We played in Colorado a few years ago. It's a really big festival. We played Handy Fest Blues Festival, which was, you know, a big crowd as well. So probably one of the festivals.
Do you get out of the States much to tour?
Yeah. So I feel like we've almost broken kind of in Europe versus the States. We've done really well in the States, and I love our fans in the States, but we're going to the UK in a couple weeks. That'll be our third tour in the UK. It'll be the fourth time that we've toured in Europe in general, and we've always done really well over there, and I love it over there.
Yeah. You made it across the rest of the world, like Asia or any of the other parts as yet?
No, we haven't. We have a huge fan base in Brazil, and that's on the list of places to play. But so far, I think we've played 13 countries, but it's all been the States and Europe.
Wow. Have you got any stories of a strange or sweet thing a fan has asked you at a show?
Oh, you know, our fans are the sweetest. I've had numerous times that couples came up after the show and said it was their anniversary, and they flew across the country to see us on their anniversary to spend that time together, which is incredibly flattering. And then, you know, I've had people that's came up after shows and talked about some of maybe the gospel songs, and it helped them overcome an addiction, or they were going through something rough.
That's amazing.
You can be extremely just exhausted and had the worst week, and even had a show that you weren't happy with the way you played, and afterwards somebody come up and say how your music affected their life, and it's like, why was I complaining? You know, it's such a blessing.
It's nice as well that you're that accessible at your shows, that you do go and interact with the fans, and you kind of do make that effort to see them.
Yeah, we try to after every show. We try to be at the merch table signing everything and shaking hands and thanking everybody for coming. We both grew up in blue collar backgrounds. My dad owned automotive stores whenever I was young, and Brian's dad worked for the electric company. You know, and I think we try to carry on a little bit of that blue collar mentality as a band. We were always fans of bands that seemed like they came from the middle class, and you know, it's. People spend there's a million things they could spend their money on. If they're spending their money on coming to see us play live, we try to be like that. You can't always be like that.
No.
You know, when you get pulled 2 or 3 different ways, but we really work hard at being like that. I feel like we're right in. Yeah, I feel like we're right in a part of that crowd more than them being our crowd. Where it's a thing together.
It's like a family environment almost.
Yes.
Just going back to the addition of Bryce, why after 8 years was that the right time to add a third member?
Well, we had tried a couple times before, and it just didn't feel right at the time. 2 or 3 things. First of all, I got sick and tired of the comparisons to the Black Keys and the White Stripes, because I didn't feel like we really shared any. You know,
I don't think you're that similar to either of those, to be honest.
No, but every magazine article would say. Would reference that, and I didn't think we were anything like those guys. Nothing against them, you know, great songwriters, but just not.
You're a bit more edgy.
I hope so. Yeah. So, and then live, we always had bass. You know, I always was playing the bass with the guitar, and I always felt like we were a bigger, thicker band live. But got sick of that. And then the other thing was, I just really had grown as a guitar player the last 10 years. We had the record company see us play live in Europe, and they said, the show was amazing, but we really wish you were playing the guitar solos. And we had to kind of modify that live and me play it differently. And Bryce became available. He's a good friend of ours here in town, and timing was right. And I just thought creatively, I've kind of covered everything I could in the constraints of being a two-piece.
Yeah.
And wanted to try to do, really, to be honest, 90% of my favorite bands were all three-piece bands.
Yeah.
You know, even Zeppelin, you have a singer, but you're still three-piece, you know, so
yeah.
It's time.
You mentioned that you're touring in the UK next month. What can we expect from your live shows?
We don't waste a whole lot of time. We get right into it and get on with it. And, you know, we try to play as honest and to who we are and just have a good time with the fans. We're excited to play over there. The energy is so great over in Europe and the UK with the fans. And, you know, a lot of the catalog, a lot of new stuff, maybe some stuff that's not recorded yet. Just get over there and rock and roll.
Do you find you play differently, or your live shows are different depending on where in the country, where in the world you are? So do you play a slightly different show for the UK than you would in the States?
Not so much different between the UK and the States, but there are some venues that we play. You know, if we play a lineup and there's 2 or 3 other bands on the bill that are really heavy or heavier than us, then we'll usually lean a little bit more into our heavy set. And if we're playing with stuff that's a little bit more rootsy, then we lean that way. So that's a good thing of having the catalog that we have that's kind of mixed, that we can, you know, can lean one way or the other.
Do you think it works when you've got a lineup where the bands are quite different to each other? So I don't know, you've got you guys on the lineup, and then you've got an indie band, and maybe you've got a much heavier metal band. Do you think mixed genres like that works on the same stage?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's horrible. You know, we've played some shows with some. I don't really like playing with alt rock bands. Nothing against them, but I don't really like the indie alt stuff goes with us. But we can play with southern rock bands. We can play with country type bands. We can play with heavier bands like Clutch. You know, blues bands. I feel like blues, rootsy, heavy stuff can all kind of be under one category. But when you get into the emo and the alt stuff, that's a different fan base. So I don't know. You got to be careful with that. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's just.
You definitely do. I mean, I've been to shows where the lineup has been 3 bands and they've all been very different. And you can see after each band, the crowd changes because they've come to see the bands in their genre, and then they don't want to know about the others because they're so different. So I think you do have to be very careful.
Yeah. As an artist, I don't want to be on the bill with 3 bands that sound just like us.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a lighter band or a acoustic band or something else mixed in there, you know, as I don't want the fan to sit there and listen to 3 to 5 hours worth of just kind of heavy rock stuff or heavy blues rock. But you got to be careful, like you said. If you have, we played a show in Birmingham, Alabama one time, and it was a packed house. But man, the band that opened up for us was like, they all wearing shorts and flip flops, and they were singing these happy love songs. You know, we go on stage, we sound like Black Sabbath. So, yeah, gotta be careful.
Why, if someone's never heard your music before, why should they come and see you live? So say they're looking at, they think, well, want to go and see a gig this weekend. What's on? Why should they come and choose you?
If they like what we do on record or on Spotify or whatever else, I think that it gives us an opportunity to show them we're even better live. I've never had. It's been a good problem, you know, good problem to have, is that people usually say, "Man, I really liked your records, but I couldn't believe how, you know, how good a time I had live," and you know, so. And then also, there's just not a ton of bands out like us that are touring. You know, it's a lot of different kind of stuff. But if you want to see people play their instruments and do it without laptops, and you know,
just good honest rock.
Just good honest rock and roll. Yeah.
Do you start any circle pits at your gigs?
No, but we've had a few. There was one at a festival we played, and I just turned around and I said, just forget the set that we had, and let's give them, if they want to party and they want to do that, then let's give them the harder stuff. So
brilliant. What are you working on at the moment? So I know you've just put out Voices. Is it a perpetual songwriting process, or are you having a break, or how does it work?
No, I don't see any point in having a break. I'm from the old school. I like James Brown putting out 3 records a year. the cost of making albums is much cheaper now, and we both have studios in our home, and we're close to Nashville, close to Memphis. So we're already working on the next record. We had a single that comes out July 7th. That was a B-side from the Voices record, and then we'll start releasing a new album, hopefully in the fall.
Okay.
And then I'm also working on an acoustic solo record too. So yeah, I like to. It's one of the funnest things for us is writing and recording. So we always try to keep going.
So your acoustic or your solo record is going to be quite different if that's going to be mainly acoustic based.
Yeah, it will be. If you like the acoustic stuff of the Cold Stairs, it's going to be similar in that vein.
Okay.
But a lot of stuff I've been writing for film and TV on acoustic, and just kind of, it's a little bit outside the Cold Stairs realm. I'll be on there.
Cool. And lastly, what does the future hold for the band?
You know, I always felt like early on when we were putting out records and we weren't that big yet, that if we build a back catalog of stuff that was good, that when people did discover us later on, then there would be this back catalog for them to listen to. And I think we're just continuing to build that. We've been blessed with a lot of success in the last couple of years. We're still just trying to grow that, but also just make the best records that we can, so that when somebody does find us and they like us, there's plenty to listen to. So yeah,
so I just like looking at your history. You've blown up in the last 2 or 3 years. You're kind of really had a lot of success.
We've been very fortunate, and it's been a lot of hard work along the way. We had a lot of struggles early on, so it's been nice. It's been nice to stick it out.
Just proves what hard work can do.
That's right. That's right.
Kind of an inspiration for younger bands starting out. If you work hard and just push your dreams, you can get there.
I think so. Yeah, I have younger bands ask me all the time, how to get to this level, and I always tell them, with us, it wasn't just the music. We made our own posters. We booked our own gigs. We made our own social media stuff. We learned how to engineer. We learned how to produce. You really have to be a graphic designer. You have to do all these things. So the more that you can have individuals in the band that are willing to, some bands are great, but just don't make it because they only want to play music and they don't want to do the business part. But
yeah, absolutely.
You want to get over that hump, you have to learn to do it all.
I think you have to do it yourself as well, because otherwise you're going to spend a fortune and you're going to bankrupt yourself before you've achieved anything. So you need to have that drive to do everything yourself and self-fund it.
Yeah, that's right. And then the other thing is that if you can do it all yourself, then whenever you have to pay somebody else, what the value is for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for talking to me. That's been lovely.
Yeah, same. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.